might have seen an email came from Michelle. She's just sent out the meeting minutes from the last meeting we had. That was the meeting where the Virginia Tech students came and gave a presentation. And then there was the application uh, that we all voted for approval. And so I apologize for the lateness of those meeting minutes getting out. So if we want to, we can put off any type of action on those meeting minutes, give everybody some time, and unless there's wants to be a motion about the meeting minutes. Yes, Tammy.
I would like to compliment Michelle on the thoroughness of those minutes. And I wanted to bring this up. I'd almost prefer to bring it up the next time we have a meeting when there are more members, but I'm a little bit concerned because I made a big deal on the Gateway Building D issue of the parking garage and questioned Looney and Rich, I think his name was, from the builder regarding are you eliminating parking, or are you digging your hole deeper to put the above ground parking now below ground? And unequivocally, I asked that question twice, and I unequivocally got the answer, no, they're not eliminating parking, they're putting it deeper. Okay, so this comes before the Planning Commission, and I'm not even sure if the Board of Supervisors voted it on it yet. And lo and behold, from the descriptions of the conversations in the press, they did eliminate parking, and they are not digging the hole deeper. And I would like that next time Mark appears to be clarified, because I don't want to be lied to about what actually is going on. Maybe the press wasn't accurate in their reporting, and maybe Tammy's brain is addled, but I don't think so. And I'm very concerned about that. And I just wanted to bring it before the committee that we expect our presentations here to be what they are presenting to the Planning Commission, and not be changed between when we hear it and it goes. So that's my comment. I just wanted to get that on the record as a huge concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Bill, if you're speaking, I think you're on mute.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to get all the way through the Michelle's draft minutes, so I can abstain, or we can vote next time.
Yeah, I recommend we just go ahead and vote next time. There's no rush to those meetings.
Yeah, they're wonderful minutes. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to our one.
Can I ask one more administrative thing?
Yes, Tammy.
We talked last time about getting on camera. Was there any progress made on that, so that these meetings are videoed? I guess it depends on if we're going to have in-person meetings or be virtual. If they're virtual, it's pretty easy to do.
Correct. Jose, correct me if I'm wrong. We are on video tonight?
Yeah. I started the recording right when you started. So
yeah. So we are videoing these virtual meetings. We can't commit to keep video going if we get back in person. So you stay tuned.
Okay.
And we'll upload the recording, Tammy, to the supervisor's YouTube channel. I think it's just easier to just put it there, and then ultimately, I guess wherever you guys want to house them, we can do that.
Okay.
Later too.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, Tammy.
All right, so let's go on to our application tonight. We have Sarah Mariska is here representing the Tall Oaks Center. They've been to us several times, and at the last meeting, I think I'm not going to speak for the committee, but the committee seemed to be pretty comfortable, with the exception of there was the issue of the application had not gone before the DRB. And the application, we didn't, the status of the county staff report, seemed a little bit far off. So Sarah's here tonight to kind of give us that update, and I know Sarah can address those two issues, and really everybody should have got plans in the mail, and then there were some emails sent around with some other graphics just to help some people if they didn't, just to see what the changes were. Um, and with that, I will turn it over to Sarah.
Thanks, Rob. As Rob said, I'm Sarah Mariska, and with me here tonight is Aaron Vinson with Walter L. Phillips, as well as John Albert with Tall Oaks Assisted Living. I do have graphics, so if people have questions, I'm happy to share them. But in terms of the brief update, we did go to the DRB, and they recommended approval conceptually. We will have to return to them to finalize every last design detail, as you all know, but they approved in concept the proposal. And then staff is recommending approval of the application as well. The staff report was published on May 5th. So I think I sent Rob a link to that, and I'm happy to circulate a link for those who may want to look at that in closer detail. There are no outstanding issues between us and staff. And as I mentioned, the DRB did favorably support the application. So we're here and we're happy to answer questions. And if there are specific questions, I provided, I hope that everyone received it, a FedEx of the latest and greatest PRC plan that we had submitted to Fairfax County. And then I also enclosed, I hope, a colored rendering to make it a little bit clearer in context. And like I said, I do have slides I'm happy to share, but I think those were the key points. So if folks have questions, comments, if you want me to go through anything more, I'm happy to do so. Tammy.
Thank you. First of all, John Carter is trapped in attendees, so can you please get him on so he can talk? Sarah, what date did you go before the Reston DRB? Was it real recently?
It was in April. I want to say it was April 20th, I believe. I'm looking at my calendar. So yes, I believe it was April 20th.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. That was what we were sort of waiting for, is that meeting. And they approved conceptually. Did they have any comments?
We did have a lot of discussion. I mean, and to be candid, it was very similar to the discussion we had with this group, which was that, it's an unfortunate situation and that there are compromises that are being made on all sides. But I could think on balance, they were pleased with the changes that we had made to kind of work, especially on that property line on our kind of eastern side. But again, it was a hearty discussion. But on balance, I think they agreed with the approach that we had taken.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that feedback.
Sure.
All right. I lost my video here a little bit. Does anybody else have any comments for the applicant?
Rob, this is Bill. I don't have any comments. I just had a question. What if any changes have been made since we last saw you?
Sure. And I will share my screen. There have been changes. They have been minimal. Just in the way of background, we were before you at the end of December. I think right before the holidays, we were before you. Subsequent to meeting with you all, Commissioner Carter had some ideas, which we workshopped with him, and that led to some minor changes to, I think, really do improve the plan. So let me see if I can share my screen successfully. Let's see if I can do this. Come on. You'd think I'd know how to do this by now. There we go. Are you all seeing the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So this image that is on the screen right now is what we had shown in December. And then this is our current proposal. I will highlight more. The two main areas of change, we were able to reconfigure the parking that is circled in purple to pick up a few spaces, reconfigure that in a way that allowed us to change the number, but not significantly impact the landscaping in that area. And then what that allowed us to do was to tweak the back, which is encircled in orange a little bit, which I think the biggest change that we were able to accomplish is both to limit the amount of pavement in the rear of the building, which I know is something we had talked about with this committee. And then also it allowed us to accommodate some additional landscaping adjacent to the building, right next to the building. And I'll go back just quickly so you can see that. You can see in this image, there's just been some very minor changes in here to reconfigure that area. There's been a little bit of tweak to this area. And then you'll see in this prior concept in December, there were no trees and the parking was really flush against the building. And in this current concept, which is what we filed with Fairfax County in February, this does slightly modify this, but I don't think it's a significant change. It slightly tweaked this layout, which I believe made it more efficient and allowed us to tweak the landscaping in that area. And then again, it allowed us to add this screening adjacent to the building there. And then ultimately it had the impact of reducing some of the imperviousness in the rear of the building. Aaron and John, is there anything I missed in that brief description?
I thought you were able to save some more trees there next to existing homes. Oh, and
That's
the
right.
trail, you were able to work out the trail connection.
So that was actually a change that we had made before coming to you in December, but that's a good point that we can reiterate, which is that when we initially were here, and I can go back, you can see that we had a trail that was really flush against this property line, which is Vías de España. And you can see we had a significant amount more of impervious surface. When we came in December, and we've carried this forward even in this current design, we've been able to shift the trail so that it largely continues along its current trajectory, and then accommodated this additional landscape save area here. And then it did allow us also to accommodate some additional screening here. But no, the Commissioner Carter, that was something we did before December, but I do think it's important to note that we were able to make those changes.
Okay, thank you.
And then you were able to connect to the adjacent property in a more reasonable spot, I thought.
That's right. That I think is a much more logical and reasonable spot. It really does carry forward the trail and largely the configuration that it exists today too.
All right, any other?
I've got some questions if I could.
I think Rob, you might be muted,
Yeah,
but go
all right.
ahead, Commissioner Carter.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. The parking on the adjacent properties. I know we had a proffer on the adjacent properties that they were supposed to provide you some adjacent parking. I thought it was 12 spaces, although I think there was mostly for after hours. Is that still in play?
That is still in play. It is 12 spaces and it is a pretty limited time window of parking. It is after hours predominantly. John Albert can speak to that, but it remains in place, but it is not by any stretch 24 hours and it is only 12 spaces.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that might help a little bit your waiver for the parking. What about the screening for the adjacent development? I noticed you have some waivers there in the staff report.
Yes, we do.
What is that about?
That is I mean, it really is something where we cannot meet exactly what the ordinance would require with respect to the transitional screening waivers and modifications. I'm hoping that while I talk for a second, Aaron Vinson can look up exactly what is required. But essentially, I will say we went back and forth several times with the urban forestry folks who are supportive of our waiver request. And what we are doing, and actually I'll just let this group know, we have had a very active and ongoing conversation with the Vías de España. We were actually at the site last week walking this area and discussing the configuration. But essentially, in the most recent set of plans, we were able to slightly modify this area such that we could try and save trees on the Vías de España property that had the greatest impact. And then we are also going to be having a board-on-board fence as well as some evergreen shrubs in that area to further screen. And then I also would add that with respect to the waiver, another thing that the county considered in evaluating the request is that there is a grade difference between the properties. So there is already somewhat of a natural screening due to the existing topography. And I don't know, Aaron, if you have more specifics on exactly what we would be required to do as compared to what we are proposing.
Sure. We are along our common property line with Villas de Españas. We are required by code to have a 35-foot screening yard and a 42-inch chain link fence. And we are, the barrier dimension varies, but at its smallest, it decreases to roughly 6 feet. And sort of as an offset for that, we have gotten into the plantings and additional preservation and other things that Sarah mentioned earlier. And then we also technically have a 25-foot screening requirement to the multifamily, which is the new residential under construction. But that is being modified in favor of sort of the continued existence of the existing parking lot.
Mm-hmm. What would you say the adjacent property owners think of all this?
I think that, I mean, we've been very fortunate to have a really collaborative relationship. We are, working with them on proposing some additional plantings above and beyond what we're showing as part of our zoning plan. So those conversations are ongoing, but they've been very willing to have those conversations. So I think they're pleased that we're trying to find ways to ameliorate the impact on their community.
And I would just add, we met with them last week, Sarah, I think.
Last Monday, a week ago, exactly.
Right. And I think we're waiting for them to get back to us with any other comments or questions they have, but the meeting seemed to be a relatively positive meeting.
And then my last comment, could you explain the stormwater management system? I just want to be able to explain that come
Sure.
Wednesday. Yeah.
That's my favorite part. So there is an existing stormwater management pond in the, excuse me, it's the western corner, but planned northwest. And what we are proposing to do is basically to continue to use that. What we have found through researching existing records for this pond and looking at what the existing or the under construction multifamily development to our west is doing. What we found is that pond was actually designed for a portion of our site and a portion of what is now under construction to our west. And the development to our west did not take advantage of that. They are not sending a significant amount of water to that pond. And so what we found is that there's actually additional capacity within that existing stormwater pond that we are taking advantage of. So that could address our quantity requirement. And then for water quality, we're doing a combination of things. One, we're proposing a relatively large hydrodynamic separator to remove pollutants from the runoff before it enters the pond. And then we are also implementing a few measures to reduce impervious area. For instance, fire truck turnarounds and things like that in the back of the site. We're using grasscrete as opposed to asphalt.
Mm-hmm. And where does the back parking lot drain to?
It will actually drain out around to the front of the building and down to that existing pond that I mentioned before. So it's a little counterintuitive because the back is about 8 feet lower than the front. But that stormwater pond I mentioned before is actually much, much lower than the existing parking lot in the front. So we've got enough drop to capture everything in a storm sewer system, bring it around the front of the building into that pond.
So you bring it around the front of the building to get to the pond? Oh, okay.
That's right.
All right. Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. Any final words of wisdom or any, yes, Tammy. Tammy,
You're muted, I think.
I have a question too, Rob.
Okay, John.
Sarah, could you put your map back up and show us with your cursor where that 6 foot to 42-inch chain link fence is that you're talking about in the extra landscaping?
So it won't actually be a chain link fence, and it will be a board-on-board fence. Final design details forthcoming, will not be, but it would be roughly in this vicinity where the cursor is.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for correcting me on that, Sarah. The 42-inch chain link fence is the minimum requirement. So what we're trying to do sort of as an
Right.
offset for the reduction in transitional screening is to provide a more effective screen.
So the chain link, the row of green bushes or whatever they are on the, is the fence outside? In other words, which side of the fence are those bushes? Do we see fence from the parking lot, or do we see green from the parking lot?
From our parking lot, you will see fence. From our neighbor's property, you will see existing vegetation on their property, plus the landscaping we're adding, then the fence.
Thank you.
Okay, John?
So, Rob, my question relates to the trees or whatever they're showing along the side there on the other side of the fence that Tammy just mentioned. It looks pretty uniform, and it looks like it's called out as deciduous. And I was interested if any of our LAs on the call could comment on if that's the right thing to do, or if we should maybe try to mix in some evergreens or other plantings in there.
Just one quick clarification. We are proposing sort of in the sort of row that looks uniform. That is a series of relatively large evergreen shrubs, and we have not picked the species of those. And so while I would agree with you that they are somewhat uniform in alignment, our anticipation is that there will be a variety of different plants within that row.
Okay, yeah, that would be good, because I think you need to diversify that a bit and have a mix of deciduous and evergreens. I don't know if we can put that into our final vote, but that would be something I would recommend.
We're certainly happy to do that.
Yes, Tammy.
And I would like to specify they be native species, please.
Yeah, I'd go with that for sure. This is one of them. There's some really nice natives out there that do very well, have a good height to them, and stay evergreen. Inkberries, rhododendrons, Rhododendron maximus.
Sure, certainly. No objections to that on our end.
Now we're talking.
You know, I'm not a landscape architect, but I'm a master gardener. Hey.
All right. Do I hear a motion from anybody?
Rob, could I ask a question? This is David Vanel. Can I ask a question before we do the vote?
Sure.
Actually, a comment and then a question. It appears, I'm certain that the fire marshal has approved this, but it appears that the access, 360-degree access to this building looks a little sketchy on the northwest and a little bit on the north and on the southwest side of this property. And I assume that that this is completely okay with the fire department.
Sure. Oh, sorry, Sarah.
No, go ahead.
We have coordinated this plan with the fire marshal. What the from an access standpoint, the requirement for a building of this type, this building is 7 stories, and so the fire department considers it a high rise from an access standpoint. They require access to basically the front and rear, and they consider equivalent to front and rear access to be in excess of 50% of the building perimeter. And so what we've coordinated with the fire department here is that with the existing drive aisle in the front and the access at the front of the building, access in the northwest corner of the building, and then the access we're adding here, we are in excess of, we're providing access to in excess of 50% of the building perimeter.
Okay, and then second, thank you. And then secondly, Sarah mentioned early on that they had worked out, you guys had worked out whatever issues there were with the planning staff. Could you describe what those issues were and what resolutions came from the discussions?
I think the
Other
biggest,
than what you've already talked about.
I was just going to say, I think we've actually probably covered it because I think we spent the bulk of our time talking about the exact issues that this committee had identified, which is the treatment of the landscaping between the adjacent townhomes as well as the assisted living facility. And we did spend some very limited time talking about the treatment along the southern property line adjacent to those multifamily buildings. We had actually originally proposed something that was more consistent with the zoning ordinance requirements with respect to transitional screening along the multifamily property line. And I think that the suggestion from the staff was actually to do something more akin to what we're showing now to make this a more cohesive community. And then I guess the only other item that we spent some time talking about was the county's desire for electric vehicle charging stations here, which is part of our development conditions. And we are going to be providing 2% of the proposed parking spaces as pre-wired for EV charging spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Is it time for motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve as submitted with the understanding that they are coordinating with the adjacent neighbors on the mix of landscaping on the southern border.
I'll second that.
I'd like to add a friendly amendment to that and specify that the vegetation used is native species, please.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Tammy, I missed that.
All right, we have a motion. It's been seconded, had friendly amendment added. Now this is always the fun part. Let's take a vote here. I don't have everybody's on the screen here. So David Vanel, give me or either a thumbs up or I can't hear you, but you're muted. Okay, Sue thumb. Okay, so 2 approvals. Let me keep track of this. John.
Good to go.
Okay, Jake.
Yes.
All right, Matt. That's good. Shelley.
Yes.
Thank you. Tammy.
Yes, please.
All right, Mike Jennings.
Yes.
All right, Rashali.
Yes.
All right, now this is where I lose the screen here. Bill Penniman.
Yes.
William Pegways.
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Michelle Kimmel.
Yes.
Is there anybody I missed? Great. All right, unanimous.
How many was that?
A lot. Let's see. Oh, and I'm sorry. I should have said I'm in favor as well. So
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
14. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to the applicant.
Thank you
great
all. We
job,
appreciate
and
it.
Thank you for your patience, but also going to, getting the DRB and getting things worked out with the neighborhood. That was an excellent job.
No problem.
And
you all
thanks
for
to
your-
John Carter for all his work to make this a better plan.
Yeah, we do appreciate it, John. It was very helpful to brainstorm with you.
Thank you, Sarah, and your team. Good job on this.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Yep. Thank you again. Okay, so there is no other agenda items tonight. I will say, just looking ahead, there is really nothing on the docket, nothing in the wings that I'm aware of that has come before us of anybody contemplating a meeting with us. So that's a little bit interesting, but we're still in a little bit of the COVID time as well. But we'll just have to kind of monitor that to see if there will be the need for a June meeting. And is there anything else anybody wants to bring up? Mr. Penniman.
Just one thing, and that's on the issue of native vegetation, which I support. But keep in mind that particularly with trees that are expected to last 50 to 100 years, with climate change, our climate is not going to be the same in 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And we may not be able to use local native as opposed to farther south native. And that's just something we need to start thinking about. I don't have an answer today, but
Very good, interesting thought there. Yes, I agree.
Rob, David again. Is there anything that we had been talking about in the past, in the recent past, that we would ask somebody to come before the committee and discuss sort of a burning issue or a long-term issue that we've been thinking about? Nothing comes to my head immediately, but I thought there was something in the past few months that, well, we really need to get somebody from that organization to come and speak to us.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of us could benefit from hearing from some others outside the group, some things that are going on in the community. Obviously, there's the Reston Master Plan update that's occurring. There's the new zoning ordinance is taking place in Fairfax County, and that'll be implemented. There are quite a number of things happening in kind of like the land development community from a state regulation standpoint that could have an impact to RPAs and some other things of that nature. But we always welcome if there's topics that we want to try to entertain and get some people to help give us some more insight, that's certainly not out of the question. Yes, Tammy.
Okay, thank you.
The Reston National Golf Course is actively monitoring the new Under Armour owners who are coming forward with a new tactic to develop the golf courses. And that is that they're chock full of invasive species. The issue really there is the whole darn county is full of invasive species. It's obvious in Reston because the Reston Association Environmental Action Committee, of which William is a terrific member, has already mapped them. So it's sort of crazy that they're using Reston's proactive action about invasive species to say it's so bad that we have to develop the golf course. So we're back at that. Just pay attention. Please keep your ears and eyes open. That is the technique that's being used on Reston National.
Yeah, for anybody who didn't see it, in the Reston Association newsletter that came out on Friday, there was a video that mentions that the Reston National Golf Course has set up a website, set up some type of way for the local clusters to get information and maybe be a source of information, a source of dialogue. I've asked right away, is there any new plan specific? And the answer was no. And then as Tammy pointed out, there was some just initial discussion on invasive species. But I kind of questioned that myself as to the validity of that.
And one of the issues, if I can add on to that, Rob, is that RA went and put that up. Larry did the little film, but they weren't didn't do a thorough explanation of this and of exactly what this website. So in essence, what we who do not favor developing the golf courses are afraid of is they will follow the wheel lock process that was done over at Hidden Creek, where they take anybody who signs up on their website and take those names and say, oh, these people are interested and infer or imply, I guess is the correct word, that they are supportive, when in fact they're just seeking to get information. So hopefully RA will be do a little bit more clarification there. I have heard their plan, but they're not advertising this, is to develop off the 17th and 18th holes right along Sunrise Valley, across from the Sheridan and that curve. And as we all know, once the camel's nose gets under the tent, there is no stopping. So the answer basically is thank you, but no thanks. Thank you.
All right.
I have
Hey,
one
Rob.
thing.
Yes, Michelle.
Yeah, so well, just one question, but also Rob, you had mentioned that there are some state regulations or some movement, I'm assuming in Richmond, that could impact the work we do as a committee. I think that would be rather interesting if someone could speak to that. I mean, that's just quite frankly something I've not had the time to follow, but I don't know if I'm alone in that, but I would certainly appreciate that if there is someone that you know of, or that someone else would, who would be able to just advise us on what's going on and what to expect. And then my question was, I think I saw in either the Washington Business Journal or somewhere else that was it at Haley Rise that they're talking about adding more units? Has that already been approved, or is that something we should expect?
Michelle.
I think there is an amendment to that. It has not been approved, but there is an amendment, but I'm not sure they're adding units. It's I don't know exactly what it is, but you should expect that coming not too distant future.
With Haley Rise, that's Block C, which is the block south of Wegmans, and north of the twin, north of the most eastern twin office buildings that front onto Sunrise. And you weren't on P&Z when Haley Rice came initially, but that was presented as part of it. And these projects are done block by block, or phase by phase, if you will, so that if they are going to bring it, it will come before us. It is significant. It is more in that block than about 550 units in that block C alone. And it is, from the article, both condos and rental apartments. So with courtyards, and my concern about it is a lot of people there and not a lot of open space or vegetation. And certainly we need to be pushing biophilic now onto any new project that comes. You want to be here, bring nature with you. Thank you.
If I may, I think that would be another one that would just be interesting, perhaps, if there was someone we could have who would speak to us about green neighborhoods. Because I think this is a concept that a lot of us have been interested in. But there's a few different ideas or definitions of it floating around. And so that might be something that would be really good to get a real idea on the green neighborhood concept and how that could benefit Reston.
All right.
If I might add another thing, what I've been hearing from the state is a lot of changes and upgrading of the protection of the Chesapeake Bay. The bay quality has gone down in the last 4 or 5 years, and it is considered, and Bill Penniman could probably speak to this better than I, but it's considered really vulnerable now. And the RPA regulations have been upped. Any property that fronts on any water shed that feeds into the bay. And I did happen to stumble on a Board of Supervisors Land Use Committee meeting where the Fairfax folks were stating that they were more sophisticated than the county. And then they turned around and tried to negate these RPA rules. And you're like going, wait a minute. So if we could have somebody from the state, that would be interesting. So we know exactly what's what and, can voice our opinions in our local area. Thank you.
Okay. Do I hear any other questions or a motion to adjourn?
I've got a question for you, Rob.
Yes.
And you might know the answer to it, actually. My understanding is that the state has now approved for Reston these urban standards for streets. And urban is not a good term, but that they have changed the way they're treating Reston. Is that correct? Do you know?
John, I do not know that for certain. That what John's talking about is, there were some urban street standards that were developed and kind of in an experimental way and allowed to be used in the Tysons area of Reston or of Fairfax County, but then they were unable to be used elsewhere in the county. But there's been a softening of that, I do know, but I haven't seen anything official that it always seems to me that when you try to use those standards, we're often having to ask for waivers and things. But
yeah, my understanding is we can use them, but I'll check on that. I'm going to offer Wednesday a follow-on motion because, when we review these projects, we're mostly pointed at the private sector, the developer itself. And what is happening, and I don't mean to be complaining, but extremely tired of what's happening, is when we go on through, and you probably experienced this, Rob, as we go through the process, the county DOT, the state DOT, Dominion Power, and WMATA undo some of the things that we do. The result of that is it's going to be extremely difficult to get to our metro stations along the Silver Line. So we spent all this time developing comprehensive plans and working with developers, trying to do the best job everybody can. And then what happens is it's very difficult to get to the metro stations. I'll give you the town center one as an example. No street lights are allowed in the right of way that are lower and are useful for pedestrians. That area is going to be very dark. We've been able to come back and get some supplemental street lights outside the right of way, but it's disheartening to have to deal with this. Then if you look at some of the details, and I don't mean to bore you with all these at a night like this, those crosswalks, they need to be wider. The timing on the signals need to be sufficient for pedestrians. Right now, you're going to have to be an Olympic sprinter like Carl Lewis to get across some of these streets. Some of the details, like turning radius at intersections, they're too wide, in my view, make it easy for the cars to get around the corners, but make it much more difficult for pedestrians to get across the corners. So these things are having a pretty big impact on all of our stations in Reston. If you look to the town center one, it's disappointing. And it's over there in Wheelie as well. The reason I'm complaining is it's not too late. We have a lot more development, believe it or not. We're going to have amendments, particularly in Wheelie, Holly Rise, you mentioned tonight, and we ought to get those more relaxed standards so the pedestrians can actually get across the street and access the metro. We can't be in a position of spending all this money on the metro and pedestrians can't get there easily. It's really a problem. So I'm going to suggest an add-on motion, which would go to the supervisors, that the agencies that I mentioned earlier would get together and come on, guys, let's work this out and make it easier for pedestrians to get there. It's something that we don't necessarily focus on in these meetings, but we probably should spend more time on that. So anyway, enough of crabbing from me, but I really do think this is something we should focus on.
Very good point,
Okay.
John.
And you probably experienced this more than I do in your work, Rob.
No,
of going through these first.
Absolutely. And right now, we're looking at that Wheelie Avenue crossing of near the toll road as a study group, and that very thing is all a part of those recommendations as to, competing standards are not helping to do what's really right in that area.
Okay.
All right. I will entertain a motion to.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded, yeah.
All right. Well, those are some good thoughts. Let's think between, and please send me emails if you want to share ideas about some things, topics, and or people you think that could be good to present those topics. That might be helpful. So if we have a couple light months, maybe that's the way to fill and educate all of us on some things that are going on. And in the meantime, we can still pass around information, which we're as a committee, we're pretty good at, and just sharing and helping everybody kind of, learn as we go. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and go Caps.
Thanks, Rob.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rob.
Thank
Right,
you.
right.
Bye.
See ya.
Good night.
right now.